It's Monday night, and yeah, there's some things happening in the great country of the United States of America as we come to the final four quarters or more of college football as Georgia get ready to take on TCU, the Horned Frogs, in our college football playoffs national championship. Of course, we're about 45 minutes or so before kickoff out in SoFi, Stadium in Los Angeles. Should be a fun one. Horned Frogs, though, are underdogs, 13 and a half points. Georgia's favorite to win this ball game, but all year long, TCU has been pulling out big upsets and surprises. So can they do it one more time? Corey Miller with the Sun, Christian Miller, hanging out here with you on the Miller's Edge podcast. I know you're hyped up, ready to go, Christian. You're a guy that played in 4 national championship games, 4 in a row, won 2 of those, and of course, you understand what these guys are going through, and the emotions and all of that to play in a championship game. So let's get started by talking about that. I mean, they've been out there, 3 or 4 days and getting ready. So what's the emotions and feelings like for these guys as they get ready to play this national championship game?
It's almost like a sigh of relief. You spend all this time and effort, working to get to this moment, and it's finally here. And there's just one last one to go. And guys are just eager to get out there, but you also want to look back and just, there's a sense of pride, that you made it this far, but the job's not done. And this is the most important one. This is the only game that matters. What you did prior to this week will have no effect on the outcome of this game. So I'd imagine these guys are fired up. I know we were every time we played them. I was fortunate to play in 4 straight. So man, just some great memories, and definitely was very privileged to do so.
When you go out there, you play in your so-called bowl game, and you get the victory, you're excited, the confetti falls on you once again, and you know that you're going, you know, to the location to play for a natty, 4 quarters, and somebody's going to hoist that Dr. Pepper trophy. But is it a lot of anxiety? Is it kind of like, with Coach Saban, is it kind of like a bowl week practice? How was that, as far as getting ready for the game?
He always tried to do a good job of, keeping our usual routine. He didn't want to make too much of it. Obviously, all the marbles are on the table, and this is for everything. But at the same time, it's one of those things where, at the end of the day, it's another football game, and you've gone out there and done it 14 times prior to this game. So you just got to go out there as if it's another Saturday that you've been doing, and we would do our best to keep the same routine, whether it was, our practice schedule, keep that as familiar as possible, pregame meal, things of that nature, even just like the walk before, when we wake up, we used to do a walk around the hotel just to kind of, get outside, get a breath of fresh air, and the same pregame meal, same pregame meeting type deal in the hotel where we do a quick little walkthrough with the chairs, and line up and go over our calls for the game. So we always try to keep it as casual and as common, as what we were used to. That way, we didn't make too much of it, because I think sometimes people get in a position and they start overthinking. They start having that anxiety just because it is a championship game. But at the end of the day, you've done it 14 times prior to this, so you just got to go out there and do what you've been doing to get you to this point.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I've never had that kind of fortune to play in a national championship game and been to them, of course, following you, the excitement for the fans, and there's anxiety. But I think if you're Georgia, you playing this TCU team, Georgia, the big boys in the SEC, really,
Right.
I mean, if we're honest, probably shouldn't be there. I mean, they were very fortunate and lucky to win against Ohio State, and I think again, had not have been for some injuries, some crucial plays down the stretch, it would be Ohio State in this championship game. But it isn't. It's better be lucky than good. So, the fan base probably looks at TCU and think, Christian, you know, we're so much better than this football team. You know, we
Mm.
should dominate this game. They're not Ohio State. They don't have C.J. Stroud. They don't have all those weapons on the outside. Although they got a big time receiver out that's going to be a first round pick. But if you're Georgia, aren't you probably looking at this game thinking we should dominate this football game?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, I think they would think that way just because they seem to play with a high level of confidence. Kirby has done a really nice job instilling that in those guys that, hey, we're the bullies here. We control the tempo. We go out there and we punch you in the mouth. So I think they're going to feel confident regardless. But I think you have to really respect this TCU team. I know a lot of people were dubious of them coming into the season. There wasn't high expectations for them, but as we've seen, yeah, they played some close ones during the regular season, but they have a lot of options with their team. They're very balanced. They run the ball very effectively. Seems to me that their starting running back probably won't play too much tonight. He said his knee was about 50%. I think he sprained his MCL, so that's a huge blow for them. But their quarterback Max Duggan does a phenomenal job playing in their system, making all the throws. He can affect you with his legs. He can run that zone read. He can extend plays with his legs. He can roll around the pocket. So, not to mention, you look at them; these guys play fast. They play very fast, and it helps them a lot. Their team speed is remarkable, and they even lead the country in big plays. So, it's not going to be a cakewalk by any means. And I think at this point, you have to respect them. They've proved that they should be there. They deserve to be there, and I'm expecting a big time game tonight.
If you're Georgia, you've I don't want to say limp your way into the national championship, but I think we saw some holes in this team because you go back to LSU and the SEC championship game. LSU had a lot of success throwing the football down the field. A lot of yards, even with the backup quarterback in the ball game. C.J. Stroud and that Ohio State offense, they came in there, they threw the ball all over the yard. So when you're looking at this I think for Georgia fans, you got to go, I might be a little bit concerned. I mean, TCU is going to come in with that air raid type offense. You mentioned, Max Duggan is able to create plays and extend RPOs with his legs. But the weakness of Georgia's team and the defense, especially, is their secondary. And those
Mhm.
guys has been giving up some yards. I mean, you go back last year, Alabama, I keep saying, had Williams and Mechie been playing in this game, Alabama would have been the champions last year. They had some holes on the back end of that defense, though. We rave and we talk about Georgia and their defense all the time and how good the front seven is. They are, but they have shown that they have some issues on that back end. Can Max Duggan, can this TCU offense, who likes to run the ball, Christian, they average, I think, 200 yards rushing the game. Georgia only giving up 80 on the ground. But where they can
Mhm.
have a lot of success, in my opinion, is hey, you know what? We might have to open this thing up and throw it. Georgia going to play two high safeties. They want to try to take away chunk plays, playing a lot of cover two. But at the same time, I think this is an area that TCU, those Horned Frogs, can attack and have some success in this football game.
I agree 100%. And you alluded to the fact that Georgia secondary is their weak spot. That's their most vulnerable position is when they're getting attacked in their secondary. And so I think TCU needs to do a good job of firing on all cylinders tonight and getting their passing game going because you're right. LSU threw for over 500 yards on that Georgia defense. 500, which is absurd. They only rushed for less than 100. They only rushed for I think it was 47, less than 50 yards, which, yeah, that says a lot because but that adds up though. Georgia has the number two rushing defense, as expected. They've got the number one red zone defense. So, TCU's going to have to really, hone in on that passing game tonight. Max Duggan's going to have to do a really good job getting that going. But I also think a big point of emphasis is when they do get in the red zone, they need to do a really nice job of trying to capitalize. I mean, you're going against somebody who's leading the country in red zone defense, but if TCU can find a way to capitalize on that and put points on the board when they are in the red zone, I think that could be a huge factor in the game tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the biggest thing is if TCU can get going, match with that RPO game, break them down in the secondary some. I know they're going to throw some 50-50 balls. I'm drawing a blank that wide receiver's name, but he's like 6'4", runs a 4.3. He'll have a chance probably to get some one-on-one on the outside. I think you'll see some 50-50 balls, especially down in the red zone. So That's going to be a really good matchup. TCU's offense, they like to run the football. They had great success running against Michigan. They dominated the trenches last week, and will they be able to do that against Georgia's defense? I think it's going to be very difficult because I do think that front seven is good. Kirby is very smart and scheming and making sure guys going to be very gap sound. They're not going to get out of position. They don't beat themselves too much when it comes to that. So I do think that TCU may have to throw the ball first, be a pass first team tonight, and maybe that will open up the run game for them to try to hit some creases and angles. But that matchup to me is going to be very interesting to see what Sonny Dykes pull out his goodie bag in the offense to try to maybe use some trick plays, catch Georgia off guard, maybe just try to steal one. I think a team like TCU needs to do something like that to try to create or get some momentum going into this ball game.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, and it's one of those things where you have to have the right balance, right? Like, you don't wanna get too far away from yourself in this type of games, you wanna stick to, your code and what you do well, but at the same time, you're exactly right. Now is the time to pull out, those tricks and gimmicks. Now is the time to be a little more aggressive, pull out a fake punt or a surprise onside if you have to,
Mm-hmm.
or dial up those, flea flickers or just something that can really get a big explosive play when you need it because you and I both know that momentum will be huge, and it's imperative that they take advantage of every opportunity possible when you're going against a team like Georgia, who again doesn't have too many vulnerabilities. We mentioned the passing defense, but other than that, they're stout in almost every other area. So I agree. I think TCU, if they want a chance at winning this football game, they're really going to have to expose the few weaknesses of Georgia, but also be aggressive. Take shots. You can't be afraid to do those things. That receiver you're talking about, Quentin Johnson, it's going to be
Yeah.
a good matchup. They got there's a Keely Ringo for Georgia, who's arguably one of the top cornerbacks in the country. So I think that'll be a good matchup. But I think this game is going to be a lot closer than people have been thinking. I'm not too sure about the spread. I think it's close to almost two scores, almost two touchdowns. But it's one of those things where TCU was definitely an underdog against Michigan, and they looked great in that game. Michigan, still had a chance to almost come, and win it at the end of the game. But
Yeah.
overall, man, TCU, I think, has surprised a lot of folks, and Sonny Dykes has done a really good job of utilizing the talent that he's had. They do a nice job developing the guys that they get. They're already attacking the transfer portal. They have three guys that are coming from Alabama, actually. You've got, the running back, Trey Sanders, Brockemeyer, one of the offensive linemen, and I can't remember the third guy. It might be another offensive lineman, if I'm not mistaken. But it looks like they're trying to turn this program around, and it honestly is a pretty cool story. Going into the season, no one had these guys on any type of radar. I mean, I think they were pulled at seventh or eighth in their conference. Last year I think they only won 3 games in the conference, and for them to only have lost one game, and that be the conference championship game, and it was a very close game, and now they're playing for a national championship. I think that's a large testament to the job that Sonny Dykes is doing at that program, and the will and determination of those players to go out there and really buy into his system and his program, and ultimately get to this point in the season.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Let's flip the sides of the ball real quick. Georgia, Stetson Bennett won last year. A lot of people still not sold on Stetson Bennett the third or whatever he is, but he continues to battle. He struggled last week against Ohio State, but in the fourth quarter he came alive, made all these big plays, and helped them win that ball game. Going up against TCU's defense, I like the defensive line. They're very active. They get after the quarterback. Linebackers are really good. They fast flow to the football, good tacklers in space in the secondary. I think LaDainian Tomlinson's nephew plays a really big game for the Horned Frogs on defense. So when you look at the TCU's defense versus Georgia's offense, we know with McIntosh and those guys, they want to run the football physical at the point of attack. They're going to have two tight ends. I think the other big guys out, the 6, 7 guys out for Georgia tonight. But they're going to utilize the tight ends. They want to utilize play action pass. When you look at TCU's defense, it's going to be the key is can they stop the run? I mean, that is really going to be the biggest key because Georgia want to control the line of scrimmage. They want to control the clock tempo and that type of thing. Run the ball, get you bring that safety down, play 8 in the box, then they're going to try to hit you over the top with those athletic, speedy receivers for a big play. The biggest question to me is, will they be able to come back? They did it against Michigan. They stopped the run. They went up against the Joe Moore Offensive Line of the Year award. They dominated those guys. Can they do this against the Bulldogs? Is going to be the big question.
And that's what something we're going to be on the lookout for. I mean, it's just one of those things where you look at their defense and they run that 3-3-5, and I'm not a huge fan of it by any means. But one thing I have noticed with it is it does provide some uncertainty, some unpredictability, because you don't know who's coming. They do a nice job, but sometimes they'll bring that third linebacker down
Mm-hmm.
to be a part of the pressure. Sometimes they bring him and a safety or a corner, and they really mix it up to where you don't really know where the pressure's coming from. You would think you look at it on paper, and it's one of those things where you're like, all right, 3-3-5 versus a dominant physical Georgia team that likes to run the football. It really spells a disaster for a program like TCU, but we thought the same thing about Michigan. They're a run first team, a real physical team. Their offensive line won the Joe Moore Award for the best offensive line in the country, and they did a phenomenal job against them. So I guess we've underestimated that system and that defense, but they've showed that they can play with the big boys, and I think that is going to be a huge matchup tonight. Because if I'm not mistaken, Noah Kirby, he's going to try to establish the run and establish that physicality up front, because that's the type of football that they like to play, and that's what I'm going to be watching out for that, because I think if Georgia can establish that run, obviously it's going to set up the pass for Stetson. And, he's a good quarterback. He might not be elite, but he can make all the throws that you need him to make. And he does a phenomenal job managing that offense. Really good system guy with a nice arm, can make passes. So I think it's going to be critical that TCU tries to put some pressure on him, because that is when you've seen Stetson make some of those air throws and just some of those questionable decisions comes when normally the pockets collapse and he's just trying to do too much. And I think it's going to be important that he doesn't do that tonight. Just protect the football, take what they give you, play within the system. He's got some talented wide receivers to throw to with some nice speed. So I think Georgia's offense is definitely going to go out there and have a productive game as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting again. I think the matchups are great. You're looking at two quarterbacks. One a walk on. Max Duggan is not really wasn't a household name. I think he was a backup, and didn't start the season. I don't believe as a starter. I mean, so you're looking at two quarterbacks. There's not a Bryson there. There's not a C.J. Stroud. These quarterbacks that have Heisman Trophy type guys. Even though these two guys went to the ceremony, but that high profile quarterback doesn't exist in this game. So you got guys that maybe a lot of people not familiar with across the country. The game is in L.A. So what do you think about the fans? I mean, we know the Bulldog fans will travel, but that is a long trip across the country. TCU, of course, in Texas, a little closer for them. So when you look at that matchup, who's going to have more fans in the stadium, in SoFi Stadium tonight? Will it be more Bulldogs, red and black, or we're going to see that purple?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you'd imagine purple, but I'll be honest, I feel like Georgia fans are very passionate, and I think this one means a lot to them. I know
Yeah.
last year them winning that first championship with Kirby was it meant the world to them. I heard David Pollock talk about how much it meant to that community there and all those fans and that fan base, just how grateful they were to finally see it pay off. Because you look at Georgia, when they've had Mark Richt, there's always like they were just missing one piece. They'd get far, but just not far enough. They'd always fall just short, and they finally were able to connect the dots last year and finally get one. And for them to be back in this position, I'll be honest, I don't even know if they really expected it. They lost so much talent and so much depth to the NFL guys moving on from the program, and for them to be back in this position with the opportunity to go back and back, first time in the college football playoff era, and the first time since Alabama in 2011, 2012 with AJ McCarron. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's special, and I think it's a good reason for a lot of those Georgia fans to travel. And I wouldn't be surprised if they show up, because again, I think they really like what they see with Kirby Smart and what he's doing at Georgia, and they want to be a part of it as much as they can. Because the fact of the matter is, I know in Alabama, we're used to going to the championship and winning, but it's an accomplishment and a task that doesn't come so often, and people really want to embrace that. And I know TCU's fan base is definitely going to embrace that because I think the last time they won was in maybe 1938. So just really special to see just how much football means to so many people, especially college football. I'm like you; I like it a lot more than NFL. I think it just has so much more meaning, and yeah, I think those fans are really going to turn out tonight because again, that's it's a big time matchup, and that stadium. I've never played in that new SoFi Stadium, but from what I've seen, it's state of the art. Very nice stadium.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Again, college football playoff national championship coming on here in about 30 minutes or so. So kind of what we want to do, kind of give a little pregame, our breakdown, and then maybe jump on here afterwards, after we see the results and talk about it. Love to hear from you. Of course, I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions, especially if TCU pulls out this upset, which again, I don't do it much, but I'm pulling against the SEC, and the reason why I'm doing that because I want to ask a question, and I hope you guys comment on this, and we can read them off the air, but and comment later. If Georgia wins, this is back to back. It hasn't been done since Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide did it. If Georgia wins national championship number 2 under Kirby Smart, I hate to think about it, and I know you do as well, Christian. Is Georgia the new king on the hill of college football? Will this be that they have unseated the master, the king, Nick Saban, if somehow Stetson Bennett, backup quarterback turned starter, gets the job done, and Kirby and the Georgia Bulldogs hoist that trophy tonight in about 5 hours?
You know, it's one of those things that I don't think they're there just yet, right? And thanks, Julie. Great show. God bless y'all.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you. We appreciate it. Excited to
Thanks,
have
Julie.
you on here. I don't think it's one of the. I think are they on the right track? Of course. I mean, you'd be a fool to argue that. If they go back to back, again, if they win tonight, that means they've only lost one game, and they played 15 total last year. This will be their 15th game this year. If they go on to win, that means they're 29-1. They've only lost one game, and that one game was the SEC championship to Alabama in the year prior. So, are they on the right track? Of course. I think they are obviously would be the team to beat because again they won the championship last year and then they'd win it this year. However, are they dethroning Alabama for the title of dynasty? No, not yet. I think we've got to pump the brakes on that because if you look at what Coach Saban did and has accomplished here at Alabama and is still doing, again, I by no means think this dynasty is anywhere near done. I think Alabama is um, more than capable of reloading and being right back in this championship game next year. So if you look at what Coach Saban's been able to accomplish here, it's truly unprecedented, and I think it's going to take a long time for anybody, even
Mhm.
Kirby Smart, to catch up to that. Now, again, are they obviously on the right track and making progress towards that? 100%. But I can't go as far as saying that they're the new top dogs. It reminds me of Clemson a few years ago when we were going back and
Great
forth
point.
with them for several years, and everybody was ready to write us off and say Clemson and Dabo Sweeney's they're the new dynasty in college football. They're the pinnacle, and obviously we saw how that has gone, and we see the trajectory that they're on. They could have a recovery, but that's to be determined. So. Yeah, I think it's a little too soon to start, rolling with that narrative.
But it's already they've been floating that out there in the atmosphere anyway. That even though Alabama was the SEC champions last year, and again because of injuries, I believe that's the only reason they lost in the national championship game. But people gonna talk about it because that's going to be another year removed that Alabama has not won a national championship and haven't even played. They didn't even make the college football playoffs. So I think people are gonna start transitioning that way and it's going to be up to Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide to obviously, next year is going to be a huge year, I think, for them to bounce back and try to, take back over the SEC. But I think I hate to say it, but if you went back to back and and they've been in those games, have been in the playoffs before. You know, you can see why people would definitely think that. I don't think they are the kings of the SEC because they won back to back, but I can see why people will definitely transition to that direction. Christian, so how do you see it? Break it down. I'm gonna switch over on my other unit here. I want you to break it down and predict the winner in this ball game, and then I'm gonna. If you let me back in the room, I'm just gonna get on this machine right here because it's got more battery.
All right, yeah, I'll go ahead and start. I'm leaning more towards, Georgia winning. Probably with this. I hate doing score predictions, but I said earlier on our show here on Tide 100.9 Big Noon Sports, I said 41-31. I think it's going to be a good game, good matchup, but I think it's one of those things that it's going to have Georgia, going back and forth with these guys a little bit, and I think towards the end they'll probably end up pulling away, scoring a late touchdown to really secure that win. But again, I by no means think this is just going to be a cupcake walk because I've gotten to watch TCU a little bit more now, especially since they've been in the postseason, and this team offers a lot in terms of explosive plays. They're aggressive on defense. They do a nice job mixing things up and really just really just keeping you on your toes. Again with that defensive front, that 3-3-5 that they run, they're just a little unpredictable, and I think that's going to be a little bit different. I don't think Georgia has necessarily faced a defense similar, so it's going to be something new for them. In the SEC, you don't really see that 3-3-5. You normally see four down fronts. Sometimes Alabama's run some three-man fronts. So some teams are starting to adapt to it, but not like you see with TCU. So I still have Georgia winning it. I think it's just one of those things. I think their running game is going to be a lot for TCU to handle. That's going to set up their passing game. I think if they can get Brock Bowers, that star tight end for Georgia, I think if they get him involved, I think he'll do a nice job of really giving Stetson Bennett some nice passing threats, and that opens everything else up. You look at guys like Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski when they have their top target to throw to, and he's on point. It opens everybody else up, and it just really helps your offense become very efficient and productive. So I think the keys for Georgia is to go out there, dominate the line of scrimmage, get their running game going, get their key players involved, the Brock Bowers, their receivers that have been stepping up for them, and then ultimately on defense, they're going to have to do a good job against Max Duggan, who provides a threat with his legs as well as his arm, and look, you look at Max Duggan, and people, don't necessarily, see him as a dual threat, but he kind of is. He can operate that zone read. He can do a nice job escaping the pocket. He's a lot more athletic than he gives off. So I think Georgia's defense is going to have to do a really nice job maintaining the integrity of their rush lanes, because if you're rushing past the quarterback and you're not being disciplined in your rush lanes, it provides holes for the quarterback to step up and escape, and those lead to easy first downs. Or you can be third and long, and everybody's covered up, but you're not maintaining rush lanes. Let the quarterback out the pocket. It's easy first down for those guys. So that's how I see it playing out. I see Georgia, ultimately winning it, but I think it's going to be back and forth for a little bit. I see TCU making some big special plays like they did against Michigan. Like we saw with Max Duggan rolling out, being chased from behind, and just getting it off to Quentin Johnson, who then takes it down 70 yards. So I feel like we're going to see some of those plays for sure. But ultimately, I think Georgia and Stetson Bennett are going to take it all. About 41-31, I would say.
Whoa, that's a big time. Georgia scored what 42 last week against Ohio State.
Hmm.
42-41 they won. I'm trying to break this down without my personal bias and be honest here. But when you look at being honest. So, but when you look at uh, this matchup, I've doubted TCU all year long. I'll be honest with you. I kept saying it's going to happen eventually. Well, it did happen because it happened in the Big 12 championship game. Kansas State won. And I thought, God, we can get rid of them now. So we can stop talking about them, how good they are, blah, 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 blah. Well, what happened? they get the nod, and even though they lost over Alabama, and they get into the college football playoff. And I said, well, you know what? Cool. They're gonna have to play Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, Coach Caggy Pass. He gonna put that thing on. I mean, they got the Joe Moore Offensive Line of the Year award. They're gonna run the football with Edwards. They're gonna play action pass. They're gonna run past some slow defensive backs, those safeties, and they're gonna gut them. Well, that didn't happen. There was a shootout. TCU kept making play after play after play. Matter of fact, never lost the lead in this game, I don't believe. And now
Mm,
here they and they playing the big bad boys of the SEC. Alabama already beat the Big 12 champion, blowed them out, showed why they should have been in the playoffs. Now here it is, Georgia, the team that everybody in the world respects. How can TCU win the ball game? And I think you said a lot of great points, Christian. Max Duggan is going to be crucial because if you go back to last week, CJ Stroud isn't a dual threat quarterback. He's a passer of the football. He's not so much a runner, but he had a lot of success getting first down and extending plays and making some things happen with his legs last week. Max Duggan can run, and he's a physical runner. He ain't no shifty. He runs physical. So my point is
mm,
going to be crucial in this ball game, just because how Georgia has been playing defense. Now, I would not be shocked if Georgia Kirby will say, you know what, we need to spy this guy. We need to put an athletic safety, one of my linebackers, and we're gonna stay back. We're not gonna rush. We're gonna just sit right there, and that guy's gonna follow. Of course, you don't wonder what spy, and that's what a spy does. He's not gonna rush. He's gonna kind of sit right there, stay about 3 to 5 yards away, and he's gonna mirror the quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia uses a spy because Max Duggan can make you pay with those legs. I think they have to be able to run the ball. They cannot become one dimensional against Georgia because Georgia wants to get you behind the sticks. They want you to get in second and third longs, and then they're going to rush the passer. They're going to have dogs. They're going to get creative. They're going to run cross bucks with the linebackers. Those inside linebackers that they have will be involved in the pass rush. And I think that might spell a big problem for TCU. So, yeah, as I said earlier, they're going to have to throw the ball, I think, to open up the run game. I think they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to take some chances. Um, and I think they can. I think they can have a lot of success throwing the ball down the field on that secondary of Georgia. If we see the same secondary the last two ball games that we watched Georgia, TCU got some good players, and they're going to make them pay. But to me, I still think to win championship games at some point in time, you got to be able to run the football. You have to be able to establish the line of scrimmage. So I said they got to do that. On defense, it's just the opposite. They got to stop the run. If they can make Stetson Bennett just throw the ball all the time, make Georgia and with the pass rush of TCU, they got dudes in the back end that are ball hawks. They got dudes that attack the ball, and they're gonna have to win the turnover battle. That's how they win this ball game. But if they don't do that, I can see this game being like the spread says, 2 touchdowns, 13 and a half points or more. I think it could get ugly. If TCU doesn't hang in there early and allow Georgia to get some big runs, big explosive plays, and they get out in front, then that offensive line is going to start leaning on you, them big tight ends, and they're going to come downhill. And it's going to be HELL hockey sticks for TCU. So I think Georgia wins. I don't want them to win, but I think Georgia, if TCU plays their best, Georgia plays its best, I still think Georgia wins by 10 points. But if Georgia turn the ball over, that they get a surprise onside, or TCU has a big play in the special teams area, I can see them winning the game. I would not be shocked if they won the game. And I'm gonna tell you the reason why I think it's something weird about it because, with Mike Leach, you got Sonny Dykes who comes from that tree, and to all kind of things that's been with it's been like this weird story for TCU. They weren't even predicted to what, seventh in their own conference, seventh. They were like a plus 250, whatever it was, odds to win a championship. This team keeps winning that last second field goal. They ain't call a timeout. They did a scramble drill, run out there and kick the field goal like it was nothing. The only hiccup they had was against Kansas State. Something weird about this game, some weird feeling about like it's just their year. And if I'm being honest, I told one of my pastor friends this earlier. I said, you know, in Moses days, God unleashed the plague of the frogs, and tonight at SoFi Stadium, I believe God is going to put a plague of frogs on the Georgia Bulldogs. They're going to be. I believe in a plague going to happen to Georgia tonight. So my hope is that TCU wins, but I believe Georgia's going to win. But I want TCU to win, and I know it'll be a great story and it'll be great for college football. And that way, we won't be hearing all season how Georgia is the new Alabama. So that's just being honest right there.
No, I think you're spot on. I agree 100% with you. I think the running game is going to be critical. I'm looking at the statistics, and TCU's their rushing defense ranks 70th. Now, in terms of the rushing offenses of both teams, both of them average about 200 yards rushing per game, respectively. But TCU actually edges them out. They've ranked 20th in rushing offense, and Georgia's 23. But again, the biggest difference is on the defensive side of the football. Georgia ranks number 2 in rushing defense nationally, and TCU ranks 70th. So definitely think that's going to be something to watch out for. But you're 100% right. TCU is going to have big time players make big time plays in big time games. That's the fact of the matter. So if TCU wants a chance, those DBs they're going to have to step up again, like we saw them last year. They're going to have to make some interceptions. They're going to have to force turnovers. Max Duggan's going to have to make special throws. That's the fact of the matter. Like they have to do that if they want to win this football game. So I'm with you though. I think it would be kind of cool to see TCU win because no one expected that. Not a single person, I don't think, had them in this country winning the national championship. And if for them to go out there, even playing the game, is special by itself. But for them to go out there and win this football game,
Mm.
that would be truly remarkable and astonishing. And then
That happens.
God, it's weird. It's weird going against the SEC, but man, I just don't know if I can see Georgia hoist that trophy 2 years in a row. Just because playing at Alabama, I'm not ready to hear all that about Georgia just yet. You
Oh my
hear it
God.
enough, and again, I see some of the similarities. I get it. Obviously Kirby Smart's team is going to resemble somewhat of an Alabama football team because that's where he comes from under Coach Saban, but they just still aren't the same. What's the saying? Is often imitated but never duplicated. It just there'll never be another Alabama, and that's just how I feel about it. Now, obviously, I'm a little partial, but it's true.
Yeah. Well,
It's true.
Nick's out there at the game hanging out doing TV. And I know he's just like, I'm gonna be out here in the building. I'm gonna walk this field for them frogs, and they're gonna be that plague out there on Georgia. But he's a part of. He was part of the pregame, and by the way, he's very good on TV. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen, Christian? Though, if TCU wins, then everybody that's been pounding the table saying, "See, this is why we should have had 12 or 16 team playoff." Because see, there is teams like TCU that weren't even ranked, nobody ever thought of, that thought they would never have a chance, and they end up winning the national championship. So I think we're going to hear those voices a lot louder, and not even still just by them making it there. I think people are going to start just shouting that from the top of their voices because if they win, we're going to hear it all season. See, let's do it a year early. Let's start this thing a year early, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with them expanding the playoffs, and I think it gives everybody a chance. But we're not going to see this too often because the best teams are still going to be the best teams. You're still going to see Alabama, Georgia. You're going to see more SEC footprint in the playoffs, and people are going to be more mad about that. You would get Tennessee in there, but it's good that you may get a South Carolina sneaking in there down the road. I think that's good for college football. So I don't have a problem with that, but it's going to be hard. Georgia has been there. Georgia has had that experience. I mean, the close call, the 2nd and 26 in Atlanta against Alabama. They played the national championship,
Mhm.
won it last year. They back again, so I think a lot has to do with just being comfortable, knowing what the week is like, knowing what the schedule is like, curbing them how to know how to do their practices. For TCU, this is new, this is unexpected. So all this stuff, and I mean they're deer in headlights. I mean we're happy just to be there, and that scares me a little bit for them because sometimes you get caught up in all the pageantry. I've been there with you all those years, and when I was doing media covering, doing interviews, and you see they're asking so much from all you players and this, that, and the third, that can be such a distraction. And then when it's time to play ball, you're not ready. Well, Georgia's not going to have that. So I'm hoping that TCU has guarded against the pageantry and all the festive things that happen, and your family members that shows up and trying to entertain. So there's a lot that these players and coaches are going to have to deal with in order to get ready for this big game that's going to happen here pretty soon. And we're going to jump off here in just a few minutes because we're getting ready for kickoff.
That's right. And I didn't even think about that, but you're 100% right. How is TCU going to fare? It is their first time in a big time matchup. They obviously did just fine against Michigan, but the national championship is a national championship. And I tried to talk about earlier how we try to do our best to just make it another game, but the fact of the matter is there is all that media. You have to do the media coverage before the game, and all the eyes are on you. Everybody's going to be tuning in this football game. This is the pinnacle of college football right here,
Yeah.
and it doesn't get any better than this. So you're exactly right. Georgia does have that experience. Will it, work in their favor tonight? You would assume so, but we'll have to wait and see. And we actually don't have too much longer to wait because it's now pretty much time for the game to kick off. Before we go, final prediction. Let me get a score. I think I said so. I said 41-31. I'm gonna stick with that. 41-31. Georgia winning it. What was yours? Did you give a number yet?
Yeah, I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna say it's gonna be lower. I think it'll be a lot of good defense tonight. I think the score is going to end up being 27 uh, 21 Georgia. But still praying. We're still praying for those frogs to show up. Yeah. The
Man.
plague,
All right. Well, we'll see.
the plague of the horned frog.
Oh Lord, we're
Get
gonna see. Like you're doing a Thriller dance. Oh man. Well, appreciate everybody checking in, tuning in with us as we preview the national championship game. Hope you guys enjoy the game. Y'all stay safe wherever you're watching it at, and we'll probably try to jump back on here sometime, reviewing it, going back to our score, see if we were close, just trying to break the game down, then maybe preview what's next. We'll probably start talking about some NFL playoff scenarios. So
yeah.
appreciate everybody joining. I'm Christian Miller, my dad Corey Miller. Appreciate you jumping on here, and we'll be back soon, guys. The Miller's Edge.